Welcome to Let's Talk Petty. Remember, we are not petty, but we sure love talking about it. I'm Kate.
Yes, we do. I'm Andrew. Changed it up on us this week.
Yeah, I want to do something different.
You sure did.
I want to do something different with our story, too.
But when I do something different in the beginning, why does it throw you? And why did I handle that one with such a plum?
Guess you're better than me.
No, definitely not.
I think that other one is just funny because I almost said, I'm Andrew. I think I was just trying to go with what you were doing. But then when I realized what happened, I was like, wait a minute. But I was thinking we could do a little different story this week on our short little tales that we have.
Okay.
We've talked about it before about maybe doing something that's opposite petty.
Opposite petty. That's a new one.
Where somebody could have been petty, but they decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
And then some good comes out of it. And
All
I think we need that because of all the different garbage that's been going on lately between the different shootings and just all the other crap that we've been dealing with.
It's been a rough week.
It has been. It's been crazy stuff going on. So what do you think? Want to try it?
Let's try it and see what happens.
All right. So this is a Tumblr thread, and this is going to be about the Titanic. Do you remember anything about the Titanic? Not the movie, the actual Titanic.
It was a ship. There were a lot of people on it. It sailed in water.
It sailed in water.
Did I say it sank?
Nope.
It sank. A lot of people died. A lot of people... Did people live?
Uh-huh.
A lot of people lived. It was cold.
Why did it sink?
Iceberg.
So you know a decent amount.
I know the bare minimum.
I don't think that's the bare minimum.
And there were a lot of poor people in the boiler room that were churning coal. They had dances.
Now you're just remembering the movie.
And they'd stand up every once in a while with the rich people and imagine that they were rich. And then they'd draw pictures of women in back seats of cars.
Now you've just... You're remembering a lot from this movie. Did you just watch this movie or something?
No, I did not.
I'm kind of impressed right now.
I mean, doesn't everybody who's even heard of the movie know that?
I don't think so.
I bet if you ask 9 out of 10 people, that's exactly what
you
they
don't
say.
remember your trip to Dollywood, but you remember scenes from the Titanic that you saw how many years ago? 24 years ago?
Probably the same amount of time since I've been to Dollywood, honestly.
You have not been to Dollywood in the last 24 years.
I guess the extra 6 years or so from when I went to Dollywood is the cutoff.
I guess so. All right.
So
Are you
in
ready
6
for
more years, I won't remember anything about the movie.
Okay. I'll ask you again in 6 years. So, are you ready to hear our story?
Wait a second.
Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
Oh, okay, good. All right, so it is the Carpathia, which is a ship. Titanic Rescue is a direct line to the fields. That's the name of the story that I'm going to read.
Okay, rescue ship.
So did you know that there is a ship that was close enough to help, but it didn't?
There was poor people in the boiler room, and they were shoveling coal.
That has nothing to do with the question I just asked you.
I just answered it.
No, you don't. You did not know that. Okay. So there's 2 ships that we're going to talk about. This is a story from My Lord, She's a Cactus. They wrote this out.
I wonder if there was any cactus on the Titanic.
That's a good question. If only we could find out.
They should make a movie about it and see if there was a cactus on there.
Now we have to rewatch the movie to see if there's a cactus.
I'm going to write James Cameron and ask him.
Did you have any cacti on the ship? Will you please make sure you do this?
Absolutely.
All right. So Carpathia received Titanic's distress signal at 12:20 a.m., April 15th, 1912. She was 58 miles away, a distance that absolutely could not be covered in less than 4 hours. So she's the ship that's farther away. And then you have Californian Her exact position at the time is controversial.
Second ship.
She was close enough to have helped. By all accounts, she was close enough to see Titanic's distress rockets. It's uncertain to this day why her crew did not respond or how many might not have been lost if she had been there. This is not the place for what ifs. This is about what was done. So now we're going to go on to the next, the ship that we just talked about, the Carpathia, who received this distress signal. And they're 58 miles away. So Carpathia's Captain Rostron had, rolled out of bed instantly when woken by his radio operator, ordered his ship to Titanic's aid, and confirmed the signal before he was fully dressed. The man had never in his life responded to an emergency call. His goal tonight was to make sure nobody who heard that fact would ever believe it. All of Carpathia's lifeboats were swung out ready for deployment. Oil was set up to be poured off the side of the ship in case the sea turned choppy. Oil would coat and calm the water near Carpathia if that happened, making it safer for lifeboats to draw up alongside her. Do you think they still do that?
I hope not.
I've never heard that. I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing either. Seems kind of bad for the environment.
Well, I think at the time this is, though, 1912.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew what bad for the environment meant.
Probably not.
All right, well, they have this oil ready to go in the water. He ordered lights to be rigged alongside the side of the ship so survivors could see it better, and had nets and ladders rigged along her sides ready to be dropped when they arrived in order to let as many survivors as possible climb aboard at once. I don't know if his making provisions for there still being survivors in the water was optimism or not. I think he knew they were never going to get there in time for that. I think he did it anyway because, God, you have to hope. Carpathia had 3 dining rooms, which were immediately converted into triage and first aid stations. Each had a doctor assigned to it. Hot soup, coffee, and tea were prepared in bulk, and blankets and warm clothes were collected to be ready to hand out. By this time, many of the passengers were awake, prepping a ship for disaster relief. Prepping a ship for disaster relief isn't quiet, and all of them stepped up to help, many donating their own clothes and blankets. And then he did something I tend to refer to as diverting all power from life support.
Do you think those people got a free ride on the ship again since they had to spend part of their trip trying to save people?
I don't know.
Allegedly,
They should have.
Definitely
Well,
not
this
something they
definitely
signed up
happened.
for.
This is real. This whole story is real. This is what happened.
So remember on the cruise we went on, they bring you into the, whatever that was, the dining room or casino, wherever it was. And they basically tell you that if something happens with the ship, wasn't there something they went blabbed on about where if something happens, you have to do this, you're required to do this, or...
I remember being in there.
I know it was something about safety and ship and crashing and something about it.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
I don't know if there's anything that they said that if another ship crashes, you're responsible
to help them. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I guess it's human. You want to help, but
That's
at least
a good
want to
question.
be compensated.
Maybe they were. Maybe we can look it up.
Maybe we'll make the movie about that. All these people that helped, and they get sent to this 2-week vacation, and we can turn that into a movie and how they were all celebrating.
They didn't even pay for the bodies of the people from the Titanic to get recovered or buried.
No, I'm talking about on the ship.
So I don't think that
didn't crash.
I know. But I don't think that ships back then thought about that kind of stuff. There was no compensation like there was now. Just like there was no, like, we got to worry about the environment. I don't think there was any of that back then.
Well, when we get our time machine, we know another place we're going back to.
Oh, I would definitely go back to the Titanic.
To die?
No, I would just
jump off an hour beforehand.
Yeah. I'd steal one of the very few lifeboats that they had.
Guys, something terrible is going to happen in an hour. I'm out of here.
See you guys later. Glad I got to experience it, though. I wouldn't just use my time machine to come back to now. I would take one of the few lifeboats that they had.
Well, that's the thing with our time machine. It only goes one way. You can't come back.
Oh, you have to live it out until you're just reborn. That kind of sucks.
Would you use a time machine if you couldn't come back to your present life?
Would I?
Like, there's no way to come back.
I would always disappear at that time in my life. I would be reborn, right?
Well, if you went back far enough, it wouldn't matter. But then would you ever go back to begin with if you were dead before that?
I don't know. This is
blew your
too
mind.
much of a topic to go off on a tangent about in a short story right now.
That has nothing to do with the story.
It does not, but something we always talk about. All right, so remember that they are 4 hours away.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing about steamships. They run on steam. Shocking,
No.
I know. But that steam powers everything on the ship. And right now, Carpathia needed
What are you going
power.
to tell me? A gas-powered car runs on gas?
I know. So crazy. That's what it says. I mean, just make it a joke.
Sorry, cactus.
So Rostron turned off hot water and central heating, which bled valuable steam power to everywhere but the dining rooms, which of course were being used to make hot drinks and receive survivors. He woke up all the engineers, all the stokers and firemen, diverted all that steam back into the engines, and asked his ship to go as fast as she possibly could. And when she'd done that, he asked her to go faster. I need you to understand that you simply can't push a ship very far past its top speed. Pushing that much sheer tonnage through the water becomes harder with each extra knot past the speed it was designed for. Pushing a ship past its rated speed is not only reckless, it's difficult to maneuver, but it puts an incredible amount of strain on the engines. Ships are not designed to exceed their top speed by even 1 knot. They can't do it. It can't be done. So that's the situation that they're in. Carpathia's absolute do or die, the engines can't take this forever, top speed was 14 knots. Dodging icebergs in the dark and the cold, surrounded by mist, she sustained a speed of almost 17 and a half. So they went 3.5 knots higher than they thought was possible because of how he diverted all of the steam from the rest of the ship.
How many knots have you ever ran? What's your top speed in knots when you run?
I don't know. No one would have asked this of them. It wasn't expected. They were almost 60 miles away with icebergs in their path. They had a responsibility to respond. They did not have a responsibility to do the impossible and do it well. No one would have faulted them for taking more time to confirm the severity of the issue. No one would have blamed them for a slow and cautious approach. No one but themselves. They damn near broke the laws of physics, galloping north headlong into the dark in the desperate hour that if they could shave an hour, half an hour, 5 minutes off their arrival time, maybe for one more person, those 5 minutes would make the difference. I say 3 people had died by the time they were lifted from the lifeboats. For all we know, in another hour, it might have been more. I say they made all the difference in the world. This ship and her crew received a message from a location they could not hope to reach in under 4 hours. Just barely over 3 hours later, they arrived at Titanic's last known coordinates. Half an hour after that, at 4 a.m., they would finally find the first of the lifeboats. It would take until 8:30 in the morning for the last survivor to be brought on board. Passengers from Carpathia universally gave up their berths, staterooms, and clothing to the survivors, assisting the crew at every turn and sitting with the sobbing rescuees to offer whatever comfort they could. In total, 705 people of Titanic's original 2208 were brought onto Carpathia alive. No other ship would find survivors. At 12:20 a.m., April 15th, 1912, there was a miracle on the North Atlantic, and it happened because a group of humans, some of them strangers, many of them only passengers on a small and unimpressive steamliner, looked at each other and decided, I cannot live with myself if I do anything less. And then it says, I think the least we can do is remember them for it.
Pretty selfless.
I think it's pretty cool. Especially when you think about, again, the Californian being right there. The other thing is, if I'm remembering my Titanic history correctly, that was considered her sister boat. So it's even odder. Odder, is that a word? It's even more odd that they did not stop and help that ship that was so close. It's almost like what were they thinking? It makes you like wonder, were they like, oh, I thought the Titanic was unsinkable. Do they really need our help? Or are they just throwing up flares to show off? Like, what are they even doing? Oh, that boat can't sink.
In my book, Astonishing Tales from the Sea, it seems like that's a pretty common thing that boats think, that distress signals aren't necessarily real.
You do not have the book, Kramer. And that is also not true.
It is a pretty crappy way to think about it. I mean, they should at least, they have radios, right, on the boats.
Yeah, they had radios, and the Titanic was sending
And it took a
distress
while
signals.
to sink, right? It wasn't super fast.
I mean, I think it was pretty quick. I mean, that boat was 58 miles away.
Right, but if the Californian heard the distress signal, you think they could have hopped on the radio and at least talked to someone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't just go down instantly. And
Oh, no, yeah, the boat took a while to sink.
so someone should have been on the captain had to stay there, so he should have been on the radio.
And they were calling to him.
Who was calling? The Titanic?
The Titanic, yeah. It's just crazy.
They must not have had enough poor people on the Californian, so the captain was down shoveling coal, maybe.
And he couldn't answer the radio.
He forgot to put his away message on his radio.
I don't know. It's just pretty crazy. And it's even crazier to think, like, besides the Californian, I'm pretty sure they were the next closest boat, which is why they responded the way that they did. But even though those people were in lifeboats, it was freezing cold. So a lot of those people could have frozen to death if they did not get there, like they had. And also, when they did get there, they didn't give up on the people in the water. A lot of the people who had life jackets on that were floating in the water and had died, they went around and they collected all the bodies on top of getting all those people back up on their boat.
I thought this was going to be feel good. That's pretty grim.
Well, that's grim, but they didn't just, oh, they're dead, let's just leave them in the water and go away, is what my point was. They didn't have to do that.
They're all dead. Let's go back to our limbo contest.
I think you feel like this is a cruise. It's not really a cruise, honey. They weren't on cruises for this. This is how they were getting across the Atlantic.
No, it was a big party.
I mean,
On the
that's
Californian it was, not the Titanic. Californian was a party boat.
that's why they didn't hear you. Just answered the question right there.
Party
So-
City, USA.
That is my feel-good story. Just a little bit of good goes a long way, especially to those 705 people that if that boat had not answered and had not pushed past the limits, that they would not have gotten there to save them. And I thought it was a really good story. It made me like tear up a little bit.
There's good people out there that aren't petty.
There is
We
good
found a
people
lot
out
of
there.
petty people.
We have found a lot of petty people,
We found one petty boat and one non-petty boat.
which I didn't know was possible to find a petty boat and not petty boat. And when I read that story, I was like, oh yeah, why didn't the Californian answer?
Was that the
So
only two
weird.
boats around?
Yeah, that's what I said.
I don't remember that.
That the Californian was the closest, and for whatever reason, they were like, peace out, sister, I'm out of here. And the other boat, which was the second closest, that's why they hauled butt over there and made that difference for the 705 people.
Lesson learned, if you're going to hit an iceberg, just make sure there's more boats around.
That is a good point, too. They should have thought of that before they hit that iceberg in an unsinkable ship.
Should have done a roll call on the radio. Who's around? Nope, not enough people. Go to the next iceberg.
Roll call. They didn't think that one through either.
Mm-mm.
But anyway, so that's my story this week.
It was much more pleasant than our normal stories, where people are shooting people in the face and all the other terrible things they do when they're being petty.
We've had a story where somebody shot someone in the face.
I feel like one of the Hatfield and McCoys probably shot the other person in the face at one point.
Oh, yeah. I think somebody did get shot in the face. I forgot about that.
How can you remember the Titanic movie but not remember our story about Hatfield and McCoy?
I don't remember the Titanic movie all the way. That's why I was impressed that you were remembering so much.
I tried to burn you and it didn't work.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, that's our story for this week. Kate's story, anyway. We'll have another mini episode next week where I will be sharing one. So in the meantime, you can listen to our regular podcast, which comes out on Tuesdays. And you'll be able to find all of our old episodes, mini and otherwise, on letstalkpetty.com. And you can find links to all of our social media there. And if you have a story that you'd like us to talk about, there's a little icon on our website where you can just click record the message, and we'll be happy to talk about it. Or you can email us, letstalkpettypod@gmail.com, and we will read the story and comment on it and let you know how petty you are or how petty you aren't. So if you don't want us making fun of you, make sure you write a story about someone else.
It's good to make fun of ourselves sometimes, though.
Can't laugh at yourself. Who can you laugh at? Someone else.
Yes. I was going to say, or us.
All right. Well, that's it. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please be sure and give our show a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.